Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode with the Crime and Coffee Couple. My name's Allison.
Hey, my name's Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, babe. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Oh, man. Really good. Got that nice smell of soup cooking all day long here in the Pernecki house.
It's Soup Sunday.
That's right. We're making enough. Well, you always like to make a nice big meal on Sundays so that it'll last us maybe a couple days. I think 2 weeks ago or last week, we made like a Chicago beef recipe, and I think we put enough beef in there to feed about 18 people.
Yeah, sometimes we overdo it. I normally gear to serve us for Sunday and Monday. Monday tends to be hectic. You know, who wants to deal with a Monday? So this way I know at least I have dinner ready.
Yeah, what are you making today?
Matzo ball soup.
And before we came on, you're like, I don't want to like pretend like I'm Jewish or something. And I'm like, I think people that are Jewish will be okay with you making matzo ball soup.
I feel like in my soul, like I love Jewish cooking.
You've said that about Jewish cooking and Italian cooking and pretty much any kind of cooking. You're just like, I feel like I'm, maybe a little Asian, maybe a little, you've never said Asian.
Well, no, I say in another life I was English. Like I grew up in London.
Yeah, you definitely said that. So it's kind of you really feel the origins of what
I do.
the cooking you're coming, which is nice, right? Like I'm a little Lithuanian, and if somebody was making a Lithuanian dish, I wouldn't be like, "What are you doing? Like you're not Lithuanian, you shouldn't make that."
Yeah, you wouldn't be offended.
Cepelinai, you shouldn't be making those.
But it's a good recipe. We could share it.
Yeah.
The only thing is, I would cut the salt in the matzo balls in half because I did half, and to me, it's perfectly salty. And I am definitely somebody who likes things seasoned properly.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, I triple the matzo ball mixture also. I like a lot of balls.
Yeah, she loves the balls. She does, for sure. And I'm a lucky guy because I get to eat a lot of the balls that you're making is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, good. Because I was like, where is this going?
Yeah, I don't know what you were thinking. Get your mind out of the gutter, please.
So I tripled the matzo ball recipe, which would call for 3 teaspoons of salt. I'm like, oh gosh, no, that is way too salty.
And we were talking about it a little bit. Like if there's one problem with people that don't cook, if there's one problem they have, it's usually under seasoning things. So I think a lot of things can be solved by just like tasting everything that if you watch Hell's Kitchen or really like any good chef, they'll be like, always taste your food.
Right.
And if you're making it, like taste it as you go. You don't want to taste like raw eggs or anything like that. But even though you did today.
Well, yeah, it's true. Obviously if you're making like meatloaf, it's a little hard because it's not cooked, but people always say just make a test patty, make a test meatloaf, etc. I could have technically boiled my little mixture, but I was like, what the heck? I'll risk it and have some raw egg. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. I eat raw cookie dough all the time.
Yeah, who doesn't? And really, the only time that any of that stuff is bad is like when you hear about those like listeria outbreaks or whatever.
Salmonella.
Or salmonella, when there's recalls. So like really, there's rarely salmonella in your
I
stuff.
just don't want to roll the dice on that because it's miserable.
Yeah, and don't take this as a free-for-all for just going and eating
and
raw,
then
raw foods.
blame it on us because
you're going to sue the Crime and Coffee Couple and you might get $200.
You might not want to squeeze blood out of a turnip.
Exactly.
So yeah, I actually kind of learned to cook from Rachel Ray because we got married when we were 23. I didn't know how to cook. I went from living with my parents to dorm life to married life. So she taught me that you don't, like, if you like ingredients, you don't have to measure stuff. Unless you're baking, if you like a little more of this, a little less of that, you do you. Like, my mom will measure out the cheese cubes in her breakfast casserole.
Which is
I'm
adorable.
like, Mom, if you just put however much looks good.
Yeah.
She follows it to a T.
And like, if there's one thing, like I like cooking, but I hate following recipes. I can't stand like a quarter of this. Like if there's like 10 things of like spices to go in something, I'm automatically out. I'm like Indian cooking is like, definitely infamous for tons of spices.
Yeah.
And that's why it tastes so good because there's a deep flavor profile. But it's like, if there's 10 different things, I'm like, nah, I don't know. Like I like basically a protein with a couple of seasonings on it.
Simple.
And a vegetable and whatever. I guess that's a meat and potatoes guy. But
as long as I have the spices on hand and I don't have to buy like 10 new spices that I might use once, I don't mind just walking over to our pantry and just, cumin, chili, whatever.
Yeah.
Just grab.
like if I'm making chili, I just kind of grab whatever crap's in the
You're
thing.
a good cook though.
I think I'm okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Right before we got in here today, we had a little parenting moment. One of our son plays fantasy football. He's got his own guy, so he really wanted his guy to score a touchdown, but he didn't score. So he's like, I'm going to throw something. We're like, don't throw anything. He's like, I'm going to throw something I own. And he's like, we're like, everything you own is ours. So don't be throwing any of our stuff.
And our daughter was like, shut up.
Yeah, you get so angry. And so he threw like the softest pillow in the house at her and she got offended. And he's like, it's a pillow. Who cares? And so we had to have a little conversation, and like there had to be something to take away from them. I always say like the best thing about kids is usually they really like something, so you have to be able to take something away from them.
Hit them where it hurts.
Yeah, exactly. Whether
the technology gonads,
internet, video games, whatever it might be. So we took away his phone for a second, and I was like, I don't know. Let's like rethink it. And I think I went a little too harsh.
We wanted to hear both sides of the story in full because I was listening to a documentary, of course, on true crime. So I only caught like part of it, even though it happened in the room with me. But it's never a dull moment. And what in the hell are you doing, Mike?
I went to Costco today with my beautiful dog. Oh.
And there he goes.
Yeah,
He's just opened a jar of olives.
Yeah. So I figured, I usually bring a drink onto the show, but this time I had a whole jar of olives. I've got 2 of them because you go to Costco and you get like enough for like a party. And I just figured it would be nice to have some olives during the show.
Well, you did pour a drink, yet I don't see it next to us. So it looks like you're screwed.
Suppose I could just drink the
brine.
Yeah, the olive juice.
You're going to be nice and swollen tomorrow.
Yeah, that'd be fine. Don't worry about it.
And then I'm drinking a tropical 7-Up Zero Sugar. So it's tropical flavored sody pop.
It's interesting. It's what, peach flavored, and the little skeleton's drinking something?
Yeah, my little skeleton here. If you're watching on YouTube, you could see Mike eating olives from a jar, and then my little skeleton drinking my soda because I share.
We'll get started in a second here, but real quick, if you like what we do or whatever, if you want to support us for free, just give a like and subscribe or a 5-star review wherever you're listening or watching or whatever you're doing. It would help us out quite a bit.
And we would appreciate it too, to boot. So are you ready to get started?
Let's do this.
All right. So this is the case of Brooke Skylar Richardson, and this is a listener suggestion from Ava. So thank you so much, Ava. So on Friday, May 5th, 2017, 18-year-old Brooke Skylar Richardson, and she did go by Skylar, her middle name, she attended her senior prom. And less than 48 hours later, in the middle of the night, she gave birth to a baby girl in the bathroom of her family home. Okay, teenage pregnancy happens. However, other than the OBGYN she had seen in April in order to obtain a prescription for birth control pills, not a soul in the world knew that Skylar was pregnant.
Not even her OBGYN?
Yes. Other than that OBGYN, no one else. Her mom, her dad, nobody else knew.
So the OB did.
Of course. The OBGYN is the one who confirmed.
Got it.
And that's why when I said other than the OBGYN, no one else knew.
That's crazy.
So the young girl later claimed that her baby girl that she had named Annabelle was stillborn, and she went on to bury her remains in the family's backyard. Oh. The Ohio teen went on to be charged with murder, and she was positively hated and vilified by social media. In 2017, the Richardson family lived in the small, close-knit town of Carlisle, Ohio. They said basically Carlisle, Ohio is a place where you kind of just stay there. You're born there, you live there for the rest of your life. So everybody knew everybody. There was a population of about 5,000.
Like the only reason you live there is because you were born there.
Right. So Skylar and her younger brother Jackson were raised by their loving parents, Kim and Scott, and both kids were very athletic. Skylar was an accomplished cheerleader and Jackson was a football player. Skylar was an honor roll student. She was a popular girl. She worked with kids at the local YMCA, and her parents describe her as a girl that was just non-confrontational, and she was just basically a peacemaker. And behind what appeared to be an idyllic, classic American family was the hidden turmoil and, horrible situation that Skylar was struggling with a serious eating disorder. And if you are someone who has dealt with or are dealing with an eating disorder and you need to skip this episode because we will occasionally reference her eating disorder, I understand. So Kim first realized that something was going on, that there was an issue brewing when her daughter was in 6th grade. She was only 12 years old, and she refused a stick of gum because it had 5 calories.
Wow.
Now, I will let you know that when I was a freshman in high school, I was about 14 years old, I developed an eating disorder. It all started when I was in track, and I had to wear these tiny little shorts and a really revealing tank top and run amongst the baseball players and everyone else that was practicing. And it's terrible. It grips you. It's all you could think about. And I thought a lot about, what I dealt with when I was hearing about what Skylar was dealing with, because they asked, how much of her life did this take up? And her mom said about 95%.
Yeah,
and
that's all you think about all day, I'm sure.
All you think about. And I didn't really break out of it until I started getting older. And I thought one day I heard a younger, like two moms talking, and they were like, yeah, we're going to do a family pizza night. I was in college at the time. And I was like, I'll never be able to do a family pizza night in the state that I'm in right now. How can I be a mom and live this way? How can I ever think about taking care of other humans when all I can think about is what I'm eating or not eating that day? So I did feel for her because it's got some really tight clutches and it's something you deal with for really the rest of your life. I still struggle to this day.
And your profession, you're a registered dietitian. A lot of registered dietitians have had eating disorders in the past.
More than 60%, I think, are the statistics. So it was the 5-calorie gum that made Kim realize, wow, something's going on here.
And really quick, so obviously, the eating disorder is lack of nutrients. So a lot of times when people don't know someone's pregnant, usually it's because the person's a little bigger and maybe you can't tell.
Right. Well, that was not the case.
Wow.
So Kim went on to say that before that moment when her daughter refused the stick of gum, she never even realized that gum had calories, let alone the fact that her daughter was so worried that, she would refuse something so trivial. So Skylar was a cheerleading squad's flyer at Carlisle High School. So this meant that she was the one that was being thrown in the air, flipping in the air during the routines. So being the flyer meant that she had to be easy to lift and catch. They're always going to choose the smallest girl on the squad to be the flyer. So her parents feel like this aspect did lead to her issues with food and her weight.
Yeah, you have to keep the weight down and be the one that they can throw.
Right. So according to her parents, during the season, Skylar would purge after she ate, and in the off season, she would binge and starve. So Skylar's plummeting weight was a subject that was off limits according to her parents. When they did try to discuss it with her, she would just shut down. So the Richardsons did go on to seek professional help for their daughter, and Skylar went on to see doctors, therapists, dietitians. It absolutely takes a team. Myself as a dietitian, without the help of a therapist or a psychologist, I can't do anything. So, and I don't work with people that have eating disorders, but I'm saying as a professional, it's really a lot of it comes down to psychology.
Well, like you said, when to change yourself, it had to be something that clicked in your brain.
Right, exactly. So, in this process, she was diagnosed with body dysmorphia, and this is a mental health disorder that involves an obsessive focus on perceived flaws in appearance that other people don't see. So people of any age and gender can suffer from this disorder, but it is most commonly seen within teens and young adults. And having BDD, this is body dysmorphia disorder, does not mean that a person is vain or self-obsessed. This is a disorder that they're dealing with. So despite the professional assistance that Skylar was seeking, Kim did feel, though, that nothing seemed to be helping their daughter, who was described as a very guarded person. She kept a lot close to the chest. Kim indicated that her daughter did keep a lot of secrets. She did hide a lot of emotions to the point that they would likely never know to the full extent of what they were. She also felt that Skylar's eating disorder halted her mental and physical development, almost kept her stuck as a 12-year-old in body and mind. So in July of 2016, during the summer before Skylar's senior year of high school, she began dating a friend's cousin. This is Trey Johnson. And the relationship was very short-lived. It lasted maybe a month. After they broke up, they went their separate ways. They never spoke again. And Skylar blocked Trey on social media. No one was really sure why. So by January of 2017, she began seeing someone new. This was a high school junior named Brandon. And the two could not be more physically different because Skylar was exceptionally tiny. She was petite, whereas Brandon, was just soaring above her. She was like below his shoulders. I think you and I are kind of like that. You're a good 12 inches taller than me.
Yep.
So the two, despite their differences in physical appearance, they just immediately clicked. And Kim noticed that her daughter seemed to be exceptionally happy with Brandon. She seemed to be at ease with herself. She was putting on some weight. She seemed to be getting into a healthier mindset. And there was hope that maybe her eating disorder could finally be getting under control. And a month later, it was time to go shopping for her prom dress. It was February of 2017. Skylar wanted a red dress. It was a color she had normally not had before for previous dances. So she chose a sparkly red dress, and it hugged her figure. So in late March of 2017, then the Richardson family went on vacation together. It looked like a warmer location. And Kim noticed that her daughter was wearing a two-piece bathing suit, and she felt like Skylar looked happy and healthy, and she was just so relieved to see this. Skylar seemed to be in a good place in her life and in a stable relationship with the boy that she cared about. So because Kim could see that Brandon and Skylar's relationship was progressing, she's about 18 years old, she decided she wanted to be safe, so she made an appointment for her daughter to see a gynecologist. She wanted her to have a prescription for birth control so that she could be safe when, she was engaging in sexual activities with her boyfriend.
Sure.
So it was April 26, 2017, and Kim took her daughter to the appointment. Because her daughter was 18, Kim waited outside the exam room. And when Skylar came out, it was obvious to Kim that her daughter had been crying. She could see traces of tears in her eyes. And when she asked her what was wrong, she basically just said her first time having a pelvic exam was just scary and traumatizing to her. So Kim had no way of knowing, though, that the reason for her daughter's tears was actually because the doctor had told her the news that you are pregnant. And not only are you pregnant, but you're like 8 months pregnant.
Crazy. Can you imagine just being like a kid walking in there and being like, okay, well, let's get this done. Let's get out of here with the prescription. And I'm pregnant and about to have a kid in a month.
I can't imagine. And I always remember when I was pregnant with our son, I was tiny. I'm short, 5'3". I was very sick during my pregnancy. I ended up losing like 8 to 10 pounds in my first trimester. It was rough. So I was very tiny and I had this missile of a stomach. And I had the remote control on my belly, and I'm watching the show where somebody gives birth and they had no idea that they were pregnant. And I've got this missile in front of me, and the remote control is balanced on my belly, and it's shaking because our son just was never still inside my body.
Still to this day.
Just constantly kicking and moving and having the hiccups to the point that this remote control is just going up and down while I'm watching the show. And inside I'm like, how can you not know that you were pregnant?
Right.
Well, I think Skylar had suspicions that she was. And there's a couple of reasons I'm saying that, and I'll tell you in just a second. That, while she is being informed, though, that not only did the urine test confirm, but then an ultrasound confirmed, Skylar is bursting into tears, and she is saying, I don't want you to tell anyone, to the doctor. And she's legal and adult. She can keep that a secret. So when Skylar went to her appointment, the medical assistant at the Hilltop OBGYN clinic immediately saw just how nervous the girl was. She was being checked in for her appointment, and the medical assistant noticed that she was much more nervous than what was typical. I mean, obviously, we don't like to go and get pelvic exams. It's not fun. I'm not like, hey, you know what? I want a big old thing shoved
Metal
up my
rod.
hoo-ha and then spread open.
Yeah.
The doctor's always like, scooch down a little more.
You're like,
a little more.
Closer.
Oh, wait, you got to open your legs a little more. I'm like, no, thank you. So it's not a comfortable situation. So she could see she was nervous. She's young. It's her first time. And she's answering the questions, but she did indicate on her form that it was possible that she could be pregnant. She also indicated that she was having normal periods. Whether or not that's the truth, I don't know. And then, like I said, soon everything was confirmed. And based on what the doctor was seeing, the doctor believed that she was about 32 weeks pregnant. So it's obvious that Skylar is not happy with the news she's being told. She's scared. She does not want anyone to know. So the doctor's like, okay, you have close to 10 weeks to be able to tell your family this news, but not that much time. So you got to do it. She ended up giving birth only 11 days later.
Crazy.
So 9 days after her appointment, it was Friday, May 5th, and Skylar and Brandon went to prom together. Despite being late in her pregnancy, she had no issues fitting into the dress that she had tried on and selected in February, months earlier. This is 3 months earlier. So her mom later did show a photo of the side-by-side pictures. The one at the dress shop in February, the one literally 48 hours before she gave birth. And based on the image, of course, it wasn't to the side. She didn't look like she was really pregnant.
That's insane because, like you were talking, all I know is you, and you clearly had a missile in front of you. Like,
people would
crazy.
joke, like, are you smuggling a watermelon under your shirt?
Yeah, it was nuts.
Yeah, so obviously Skylar was carrying very, very small.
Yeah.
So, she goes to prom with Brandon, and, again, she's kind of tied up into this dress. It's form-fitting. No one suspects a thing. So she and Brandon are having a good time at prom together, but she did start to feel different types of sensations at prom, and they started to intensify. She was having really bad cramps to the point that she is a very guarded, private person. She had to admit to Brandon that she was feeling this way. He's comforting her. He thinks she's just getting cramps associated with her period coming. He's rubbing her back, being a sweet and supportive boyfriend.
So he doesn't know, obviously.
He has no idea.
Yeah.
So, she did have the fact that these cramps were happening. This was the first signs of labor was starting. So on July 14th, now we're moving on, 2017, the police are showing up to the Richardson home, and her dad's answering the door. He has no idea what's going on. They are indicating that they wanted to speak to their daughter about something that she may have witnessed. They assured Scott that their daughter was not in any trouble whatsoever. They just wanted to talk to her. So Scott later reflects that allowing his daughter to go down to the station was the biggest mistake he has ever made in his life. So Scott drove Skylar to the Carlisle Police Department, and Lieutenant John Frayne wanted to speak with 18-year-old Skylar about a phone call that they had received. So Scott had absolutely no idea what they were going to discuss, and he was in the dark about his daughter's pregnancy and then subsequent birth. So he has no idea. So the interview started with pleasantries. I watched the interview happen. Skylar was answering their questions about what she planned on doing, that she wanted to go on to study child psychology at college. Lieutenant Frayne indicated that they had received a call from the OBGYN's office that a patient had delivered their baby at home and later buried her in the backyard. Skylar was taken into the interrogation room, and again, she's there by herself with the detective. Her dad was not allowed to go in with her because she was legally an adult. So Lieutenant Frayne read the young girl her rights, and then the questioning is beginning. So he told her that he was aware of the fact that she was informed of her pregnancy at her doctor's visit on April 26th. And then 2 months later, it's July 12th, 2017, Skylar went back to this exact same office. However, this time she is meeting with a different doctor, not the one that told her that she was pregnant. So the reason for this visit was to request a refill for birth control. So again, she's meeting with a different doctor. This time around, it's Dr. Casey Boyce. And Dr. Boyce obviously sees her chart that she was about 32 weeks pregnant when she was there in April. So she's now sitting there in front of Dr. Boyce. She's clearly not pregnant. So Dr. Boyce confronts Skylar about the fact that she is no longer pregnant. And this is when Skylar emotionally told the doctor that in the very early morning hours of Sunday, May 7th, this is 2 days after prom, she gave birth to a stillborn baby girl. That is exactly what she told Dr. Boyce. She admitted that she had not told anyone about her pregnancy, let alone the fact that she delivered her baby at home. Dr. Boyce was stunned that a young girl could go through the painful process of childbirth within the family home all by herself without anyone hearing or seeing anything. Of course, we know it happened in the middle of the night. So she was the first person to hear about what happened, meaning Dr. Boyce.
Right.
She said the first person on the planet to hear about what happened. So Dr. Boyce wanted to perform a physical exam to make sure that everything was okay after she gave birth. But Skylar declined, and her prescription for birth control was refilled. Dr. Boyce advised her to seek counseling and professional help. So now it's 2 days later. It's July 14th. This is the day that the officer came to the house and said that she needed to come into the station. So she is talking, so basically here's how it all started. On the 14th, Dr. Boyce, who had done the follow-up visit with Skylar, spoke with the doctor. This is Dr. Andrew, who had informed Skylar of her pregnancy and said, hey, this young girl gave birth at home. She said the baby was stillborn, but she buried the baby in the backyard. We can't do that. So they didn't know. They discussed, okay, what do we do? They knew they had to contact the police. That's how the investigation got started. That's how the police learned about what happened. So Skylar directed officials to the location of the burial site and indicated that the investigators were indicating that she was visibly upset. Soon, investigators located the skeletal remains of the baby that Skylar had named Annabelle in the Richardsons' backyard. So investigators returned to the home on July 24th to inspect the interior of the home and to remove its electronics. As they entered Skylar's bedroom, it appeared that the bed had been recently moved. Of course, you could see like where the footmarks of the bed were on the carpet before. And so they're moving her bed now, and they could see that the area that is under the new location of her bed looks to have been scrubbed. So now they're utilizing the blue star. It's indicating that there had been a large amount of blood in that area. So it's obvious that she moved the bed to cover that area that had been scrubbed. Blue star also illuminated in the hallway as well as near the bathroom and her bed, like the hallway to the bathroom. So clearly there was a lot of blood loss in her bedroom, and then you could tell she moved to the bathroom.
That's poor girl.
It really does. It breaks my heart to think that this 18-year-old had to have been terrified and all alone in this, not telling a soul in the world about what was happening. So according to Skylar, she was sitting on the toilet. She felt that something needed to come out. At this point, she said that the baby just kind of came out. She said she tried to grasp the baby, but she was unable to because of how slippery she was. She indicated that the baby's head fell into the toilet. The umbilical cord was not connected. It was detached, so she never had to cut the umbilical cord. She saw no signs of life as she tried to hold her baby to see if she was breathing. She noticed that her baby did not have a heartbeat. Her eyes were closed. She saw no movement. Skylar said that she wrapped her baby in a towel. She held her, she cried, and she mourned her death. Skylar told the officers that she made the decision to continue her secret. So she decided, since her baby was deceased, to bury her in the backyard. She said she cried, or I should say, let me repeat this. So as she is sitting in the interrogation room and the officers are explaining to her why she's there, she is crying and saying, am I going to be in trouble for what I did? Am I going to go to jail because I buried my daughter in the backyard? And she said over and over, I promise I didn't do anything to hurt my baby. She was dead when she came out. So she explained that her family was asleep during this whole time because it was the middle of the night. And while she was still suffering from intense stomach pains and bleeding, she quietly made her way downstairs. She grabbed a small gardening tool from the garage. She went out into the backyard and dug a very, very shallow grave. She unwrapped the baby from the blanket or towel and buried her remains. She said that she decided to call her Annabelle. She said, I didn't know anyone with that name, so I knew whenever I heard it, it would remind me of my baby girl. She then placed a 25-pound flower pot over the gravesite. She took some of the pink flowers that remained from prom and put that in the area around the gravesite. And this whole time, her family is still asleep, unaware, up inside the house.
Crazy.
So Skylar basically crept back up the stairs. She cleaned up the mess from her labor, and she went back to sleep. So after 45 minutes of questioning, Scott was finally told why Skylar had been brought to the station in the first place. And obviously, he is shocked to hear about what happened.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Kim is being told. Kim remembers that she was so stunned that she could not get up or feel her body. She was baffled by the realization that she had not noticed that her daughter had been pregnant. She said, I've seen her every day. I look at her. I talk to her. I hug her. Reports indicate that Skylar's weight did often fluctuate. She could go anywhere from 90 to 140 pounds. She often missed her period. Oftentimes, if you have an eating disorder and your weight drops too low, you can very well miss a period. Your body is desperate for different nutrients that you're not getting. So she did have a very sporadic period. So because of her routinely changing appearance, no one suspected that she was pregnant. So within the interview room at the station, the family was given privacy to speak to one another. They indicated that they were never made aware that they were actively being both video and audio recorded during the time that they were just talking with their daughter. Every movement, every word was being recorded. Skylar continuously apologized to her parents for what happened, and Scott said that he wished she would have just told them. Skylar told her parents that she named her baby Annabelle, and the baby's father was the friend's cousin that she had dated shortly before Brandon. The relationship lasted about a month. This is Trey Johnson. According to Trey, he and Skylar had sex on 2 occasions, once without the use of protection. So the relationship ended a month later, and again, there was never a mention to Trey that there was concerns that she may have been pregnant. She blocked him from social media. She never spoke with him again.
Nobody does selling better than Shopify. Shopify is the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret, with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts go abandoned and way more sales going through. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. On the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more, sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout that Skims uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period for 3 months at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
Annabelle's prospective father, Trey, and his family did not learn of the alleged stillbirth until 2018. Trey's mother, Tracy, later indicated that the whole ordeal of losing her first grandchild has shattered the family. So Kim could be heard telling her daughter, now that they're in this interrogation room, it's being audio and video recorded, that she was going to lose Brandon over this and that they had the perfect life. And this definitely led to like her mom being vilified. Was like, it was all based on how the appearance looked. Did they look perfect, etc. Kim later indicated that she was just truly devastated to the core, that her young daughter had harbored such a secret and didn't feel comfortable enough to come down and tell them what was truly going on. And soon everyone in town was aware of this dark secret.
That sucks.
The house was taped off with crime tape. Everybody learned what happened. And it's obviously in direct contrast to what Skylar had hoped to accomplish.
Yeah, keep it absolutely quiet. And from that, going to Facebook, and like all these Facebook pages with like the local stuff, they're all talking about it. It's in the newspapers, and man, just the scuttlebutt, where he's trying to talk about different theories and rumors and all that. That's it's tough. And
right.
So what do you think with her mom, Kim? Do you think that was a little insensitive?
I think she was in such shock that I really can't judge the words that came out of her mouth at that exact moment.
Sure.
I can't imagine just everything you're processing in your head. How did I miss this? Is it a sensitive thing to say? Yeah. Absolutely not. I'm not going to say that it is.
Right.
You can't change what happened in the past. That's what I try to tell our kids. We can only learn from our past mistakes. Obviously, this is a bigger, deal than the things that I'm referring to when I say that.
Yeah, and there's no way for her to prepare for this moment.
No. So she was definitely judged hardcore. There's a lot of Reddit threads that really, really throw Kim under the bus.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. So after more than 5 hours at the station during her initial interview, Skylar, Kim, and Scott were told that they could go home. But then only 6 days later, now it's the 20th, Lieutenant Frayne informed Skylar that she needed to come back to the station. Again, Scott was told she was not in trouble. This is not a life-changing situation.
Fool me once, shame on me.
Nothing to worry about.
Fool me twice, shame on me, you, me. Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Yes. So this time, as Skylar sat with Lieutenant Frayne, he informed her that they were now aware that more happened than what she initially said happened. According to Dr. Elizabeth Murray, this is a forensic anthropologist who analyzed the baby's remains, there were findings that indicated that part of the baby's bones had been charred. So Lieutenant Frayne is learning this information shortly before he's bringing Skylar back into the station. So he is obviously believing that Skylar had been lying about her baby being stillborn. He suspected that she killed the baby in order to keep her secret. And it was his goal to get Skylar to admit that she had killed her baby and buried her in the backyard potentially burning her remains in order to hide the evidence. So when Lieutenant Frayne told Skylar that there was evidence to suggest that her baby had been burned, Skylar was visibly shocked and said, "Burned her? I promise on anything I didn't burn her. I swear on anything." She continuously denied these allegations over and over and over again for a grand total of 17 times during the conversation within this room. And the fact she was firm on that she did nothing with fire. She said, "There's a fire pit in the backyard. My dad does bonfires. I didn't touch fire."
Okay.
So Lieutenant Frayne pressed on. He maintained that she had to be lying because Lieutenant Frayne was told with 100% certainty, with scientific certainty, there had been a fire. So he conveyed this to Skylar as he and another detective continued to tell her, "We have scientific proof that you did burn your baby's remains." So this is what's happening. So in the meantime, moving forward, a professor, this is Alan Hirsch. He is an expert on criminal interrogations and false confessions. He later testified that during Skylar's interview, the investigators used an interrogation method that minimized the crimes and explained to her that they only wanted to provide a proper burial for her newborn. They knew that she had no intention of harming her baby. He referenced two statements that Lieutenant Frayne made. "It's not as if we are suddenly going to jump up and judge you, and we're not going to say that you're going to jail. You just tell us everything, and then we can move on." Hirsch indicated that this can break an innocent person down to falsely confess. These tactics can make a suspect feel at ease and remove the focus from their consequences. So Skylar, she seems so confused. And now she's speaking in the same room with Lieutenant Frayne. She's speaking with Detective Brandy Carter. And suddenly, Skylar changes her story and said that she had a lighter. Lieutenant Frayne asked if she heard any sounds from the baby, such as a gurgling. Skylar said that maybe the baby made a sound like a gurgle, and this, of course, would have indicated that the baby had not been stillborn as she first indicated. She specifically used the exact same word, gurgle, which Lieutenant Frayne had used. So after an hour-long interrogation, 18-year-old Skylar was arrested. She was charged with reckless homicide. They theorized that she suffocated her baby because she was telling the investigators, "Yes, I did. I wrapped her in a towel and I held her close to me. Maybe I held her too tight. I don't know." So when investigators brought Scott and Kim into the room to let them know what was going on, she tells her parents, "I tried to cremate the baby just a little." And obviously her parents are floored. Her father's like, You did what? You tried to cremate the baby?" So they're being told basically that maybe the baby made a sound. Maybe she did deliver a live baby and she got scared and she squeezed the baby tight. The baby died and then she tried to burn the baby. That's what they're hearing. So she's being arrested for this. So Skylar posted bail. She returned home with her family. And then 2 weeks later, the case was presented to a grand jury who indicted her on new charges, and she was arrested again. This time she faced charges of aggravated murder, which in Ohio carries a mandatory life sentence.
Oh, wow.
Yes, this is huge.
Jeez,
So-
some of these, like the other things that we talk about, like definitely require life sentences, and this is like so up in the air. I mean, I've got a lot of opinions, but
So
it's
she
crazy.
was also faced with involuntary manslaughter, endangering children, and abuse of a corpse. In the meantime, the case became international news as reporters were informed by District Attorney David Fornshell that Skylar gave birth to a living infant. She caused the death of the baby. She burned and buried her remains because the baby was basically going to be an inconvenience in Skylar's life. It is what was being suggested during this whole press conference. So how the family was painted was that Skylar and her family were obsessed with outward appearances, and Skylar was just basically painted as a spoiled, entitled teenager that worried more about her vanity and her shape and her size than the life and, greater good of her child. So Scott and Kim maintained that their daughter would never hurt anyone, let alone a helpless newborn baby, and they intended to do everything they could to prove her innocence with the help of their defense attorneys. So after her arrest, Skylar spent the weekend behind bars until her family was able to gather up the $50,000 bail to post her bond. And following the prosecutor's press conference, the court imposed a gag order, but the damage was done. Skylar was painted as a girl that was so focused on her looks that she hid the fact that she was pregnant. She secretly gave birth. She murdered her baby, burned her, and buried her in the backyard. She is a cold-blooded, awful human. Everyone in the world that knows about the story hates her guts, hates her family's guts.
Yeah, I mean, it's the police and kind of the public that are controlling the narrative of everything, and that's what they're going with because it's a lot more salacious than
very salacious.
Yeah.
So Kim and Scott indicated that their every movement was scrutinized and they were absolutely dragged through the mud on social media.
Well, I mean, picture in your own town if you hear that this all happened, you kind of take it that they're saying the truth. Like this girl only cared so much and she killed her own infant that was born and, murdered her infant. I would hate that person too if I heard that.
So the streets are positively lined with reporters, with people just wanting to look at the house. They said people are literally just sitting outside the house with snacks and, just waiting to see the family. And at nighttime, there's spotlights shining on the house. It was just insane. So they basically became prisoners in their home. Kim would later see photos of herself sitting on the back porch, moving amongst the house, etc. So prominent local defense attorneys indicated that this was a case of a false confession. And during the time in between the arrest and the trial, an absolute bombshell was dropped when Elizabeth Murray, this is the doctor that reported that the baby's remains had been burned and charred, retracted her original statement and indicated that after taking a second look at the bones, they showed no signs whatsoever of any incineration or burning.
You piece of shit, you literal piece of garbage, created this entire fiasco. Because not dumb, but the lieutenant that took this as fact because you said it was fact.
And he did say that to the doctor. You're certain.
Right.
100% yes.
Before I go in on this 18-year-old about burning her own baby, you better tell me the truth that this is 100% certain. Yep, it sure was burned bones. And then when you're hearing that, Skylar was like, yeah, well, there's fire back there, you're thinking, well, maybe she found some char pieces. It wasn't necessarily from the bones, right? I mean, that's possible. So you go back to the doctor and be like, well, here's what she said. I wouldn't be surprised if the lieutenant went back to her and be like, is it possible that, maybe you found some char and it wasn't directly attached to it, but maybe she relooked at it and like, yeah, I guess it is. And humans, we make mistakes, but at the same time, err on the side of caution rather than the side of getting this person in jail.
Right. So every doctor that ended up being involved in the case, including the state's own doctor, agreed that this had been a false opinion. When the fire pit was searched, charred pieces of burned wood, chicken bones, and fish bones were found, but nothing that appeared to be human. However, because of the gag order, Dr. Murray's recanting could not be released to the public. So as they're going up to the trial, everybody still believes that this infant's body had been burned.
Oh my God.
They could not say a thing about it.
Meanwhile, they all know.
Yes.
Ugh.
So Skylar was fitted with an ankle monitoring bracelet and placed under house arrest, spending much of her time reading or just with the family dog.
Well, the good news is Skylar's going to have a bunch of money. I'd rather just have my privacy. But,
right.
Jeez.
So her parents placed an angel statue in the backyard to mark where Annabelle had once been buried. A year went by, and Skylar's plans to attend the University of Cincinnati, they were put on hold. They were gone. Her life was on hold. She was unable to work. She was unable to go to school as she was just awaiting trial.
Well, she's looked at as a murderer who burns her kid.
Right. So the defense filed a motion to move the trial to another county because, again, this was such a media circus, but this was denied. In July of 2019, the state came to Skylar's lawyers with an offer. They would take away the aggravated murder charge off the books if she pleaded guilty to all the other charges which could put her in jail for up to 15 years.
I would say go to hell. Go to straight to freaking hell and come at us. Let's see what you got, you pieces of garbage.
Yeah, but it's scary because you're putting your faith in the hands of a jury, and if they decide she's guilty, she will never see the light of day. She will be behind bars for life without the possibility of parole. So Kim and Scott knew that their daughter was an adult and that she had a decision to make, knowing that there was otherwise the possibility of life in prison without parole. So Skylar came to her parents. Her mom remembers it was a Sunday, and she said, "I am not going to make a plea to something that I didn't do." So as she awaited trial, sadly, her eating disorder raged on because it was the one thing in her life that she was able to control.
Yeah.
And the Richardsons watched as their daughter just virtually wasted away and disappeared, and they couldn't do anything about it. Her weight plummeted to under 90 pounds. She could only fit into children's clothing. Her hair began to fall out.
Was she in jail at the time?
No, she was home on house arrest. So despite reported concerns about a tainted jury pool, the trial began on September 3rd, 2019, with a 12-person jury. The prosecutor delivered his opening statements by reading the jury a text that Skylar had sent her mom only hours after she gave birth. And she wrote, "I am literally speechless with how happy I am. My belly is back, OMG, and I'm never, ever, ever, ever letting it get like this again. You're about to see me looking freaking better than before. OMG, I'm just in freak out mode. I want to look amazing again more than anything. I hate being like this so much." So the prosecutor was characterizing Skylar's words as vanity rather than what doctors consider to be a disorder, an illness. People can't understand that this is not vanity when a girl is in the throes of an eating disorder and her whole life revolves around how thin she thinks she looks. So obviously there's more to these words than meets the eye.
Yeah, but at the same time, it is because of vanity. You keep thinking that I need to be skinny, and that's good. I want to look good. I want to look good. I want to look
It's
good.
a mental disorder that you can't control.
It is, but I think it's also associated with vanity because it's a mental. Yeah, you might not be able to control it, but you're trying to look skinnier, which you think is good. You know,
But as being somebody that was in the thick of it, I can tell you I could not have. Anyone could have told me 10 trillion times, you're thin, you're thin, you're thin. I wouldn't have believed them.
I believe that because I saw it while we were dating. You kept on saying, "Oh, there's more." Whatever. You look at yourself in the mirror and you see a lot of weight to lose, even though you could be like your bones could be protruding. I definitely get that side, but at the same time, there's a time. There's some vanity to it too. It's not all one or the other.
So he also showed a selfie that Skylar had taken at the gym that same afternoon. They painted a picture of a shared obsession between Kim and Skylar with Skylar's appearance, specifically her weight. So that's another reason why Kim was vilified throughout this process, is that they're like she was supporting her daughter's eating disorder by encouraging her on.
Other question, Skylar's in their house. Why can't they tell her eat?
Because you can't force feed somebody. Jesus, please do not go on to be a counselor in a eating disorder clinic.
Well, here's the thing. I wouldn't just be like, sit down, you're eating this hot dog, or otherwise you can't get up. I'd be like, listen, we're really concerned as parents, right? And you'd be like, please just like have something. And like, I don't know.
You don't think my parents said that to me every single day, 150 times a day?
They might be in passing like, oh, you really should eat something.
They were scared senseless.
But like, wouldn't you sit down and be like, okay,
you can't talk to somebody like that. Nobody could tell me. It wasn't until something clicked in my mind.
I know that. But while she's on house arrest right in frurt of you, literally all the time,
you can't force feed somebody.
Can't you be like, you need to eat, you're down to 90 pounds?
Yeah, I'm positive they said that to her. It doesn't matter. They can't force her to do it.
Yeah.
So, the defense is also saying that the texts between Skylar and her mom regarding her weight were not uncommon. For 6 years, her mom had been very concerned about her losing weight. I will say that I did see some text messages that were encouraging. You should not encourage somebody that has an eating disorder to be thin and get back to your previous lower weight.
It reminds me a little of like a pageant girl, like she's kind of living vicariously through Skylar, and allegedly, I have no idea about this, but that definitely reminds me of that.
Right. So because Skylar's mom, Kim, was on the witness list, though, she was not allowed in the courtroom at this point. So prosecutor Stephen Nippen indicated that Skylar's actions and words proved that she had no intention of ever keeping her baby. However, they were unable to prove that her baby had been alive versus stillborn, as Skylar had initially indicated. Prosecutor Nippen referred to Skylar's second interview with officials when she admitted that she saw her daughter's arms potentially moving a little. She may have heard a gurgle or a cry. This was when she told investigators that maybe she held her baby too tight. Then, with ongoing interrogation, she indicated that she had burned her baby's body. However, the defense is arguing that Skylar had only told the police what they wanted to hear because she was so vulnerable and gradually broken down. And I will remind you that on 17 previous times, she said, "No, I did not burn my baby. I did nothing with fire." And you could even tell how jolted she was when they said her baby had been burned. She was like, "Burned?" Like she was shocked. So when the prosecution called Dr. Susan Brown, this is the assistant Warren County coroner who performed the autopsy on the baby's remains, to the stand, she indicated that the cause of the infant's death was homicidal violence of undetermined etiology. When the doctor was cross-examined by the defense, though, she admitted that there was no evidence that Skylar had killed her baby or that the baby had been born alive.
So how the hell do you say it's homicidal?
I don't know.
Like, what is wrong with these morons? That's like, this should be illegal. Those people should go to jail. Like, how do you just come up with something? Clearly somebody somewhere was like giving her an idea, be like, hey, we really need this. So
there was nothing on the baby's remains that indicated that she had been born alive.
I mean, undetermined or whatever, a TBD, I don't know, like NA, I don't know. Like,
right.
Just, you don't have to come up with something every time.
Right. So under cross-examination, witness after witness called by the state agreed that there had been no physical evidence that she had given birth to a live baby. There was no trauma. There was no burning to the baby's bones. The only evidence came from Skylar herself, who admitted to burning the baby's body after ongoing interrogation. During the first interview that was held at the station, which I believe I said was July 14th, she said, "I gave birth and the baby was deceased." It was only when they kept saying over and over, "We know you burned your baby," that she did say, "Maybe I saw her arms move. Maybe I heard a gurgle. Maybe I held her tight or too tight."
Are you going to talk about the umbilical cord, how she said it wasn't?
I will.
Okay.
Yes.
That's curious for me. I've never heard that.
Yeah. And I will remind you again that on 17 occasions she denied. So the defense called an obstetrician, this is Dr. John White, to the stand, who voiced his belief that the baby was not alive at birth. He made references to different things that Skylar had said, the fact that she had never cut the umbilical cord. This indicated that the cord may have become detached sometime before or during the birth. So this would not be consistent with life, if this happens. I mean, we know how it goes. You have to cut the cord after a baby's born. So the doctor indicated that so another thing that Skylar had said was that the baby was very white in appearance when she was born. And the doctor indicated that when a healthy newborn baby is delivered, they tend to be almost purple in color until they let out that first scream. He also said that throughout his career, he had never heard a newborn baby gurgle when they were born. It's that first initial wail that we all wait to hear for after we give birth to our baby.
Yeah, because something in the brain turns on. It's like, you're breathing now.
Right.
Let's go.
So Dr. White...
It's not like...
Right. It's like a silence and then a cry.
It's like, I'm here.
Yeah. So Dr. White also pointed out that Skylar had only gained 15 pounds during her pregnancy and that her eating disorder could have affected the baby's development in utero, which increases the risk of intrauterine demise or neonatal death. When Skylar learned of her pregnancy during her OBGYN visit on April 26, 2017, the doctor measured her at 32 weeks pregnant based on her fundal height, which is the distance from the pubic bone to the top of the uterus. However, it's believed that the baby was conceived sometime between July 24th, 2016 and August 7th, 2016, which would put Skylar at 39 weeks pregnant, which would mean that she was measuring behind fundal height by about 7 centimeters. This would suggest intrauterine growth restriction. However, another expert in maternal and fetal medicine, this is Dr. Brady, took the stand on the behalf of the prosecution and indicated that fundal height measurements are not a way to determine intrauterine growth restriction because fundal height is only accurate until 20 weeks pregnant. During the third trimester, fundal height measurements are inaccurate about 60% of the time, and the diagnosis of intrauterine growth restriction does not presume stillbirth, according to Dr. Brady.
So 2 different doctors basically cancel each other out.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned.
She did only gain 15 pounds, though, and that is not a lot. So data from Skylar's phone indicate that she suspected that she was pregnant before her OBGYN appointment on April 26, 2017, when it was actually confirmed, because on April 17th, she made searches on her phone that said, "What happens at the gyno when you're pregnant?" And we do know that she even indicated while she was at the office.
Yeah.
So Dr. William Andrew from Hilltop OBGYN saw Skylar on April 26, 2017. He indicated that when she found out that she was pregnant, she seemed surprised. She immediately broke into tears. He recalls Skylar's worry about how she would be able to take care of a baby when she was going to start college. She said, "I can't have a baby. I'm going to college in September." Dr. Andrew assured her that she had options and people would line up to raise the baby in reference to adoption. He told Skylar that she needed to start prenatal care immediately. He wanted to schedule a follow-up ultrasound to get a better idea of how far along that she was, but despite attempts to schedule these appointments, Skylar did not return to the office until July, when she confessed the whole thing, the fact that she gave birth at home and buried the baby. So an expert on police interviews took the stand and explained to the jury how certain tactics used by law enforcement can lead to a false confession. And obviously, we saw how in the initial part of the interrogation, she was like, "What? Burn? I never did anything with a fire too. Maybe I tried to cremate her a little," to the point that she said, "I took out a lighter."
Yeah.
She said that. So, people do change and false confess. Certain people are more susceptible than others. And Dr. Stuart Bassman, a clinical psychologist who spent hours interviewing Skylar, indicated that in his opinion, Skylar suffers from a mental disorder that predisposes her to comply with people of authority. And even her parents said she was like an peacemaker. She wanted to keep the peace, go along with everything. Probably a people pleaser, etc. So as the detective spoke with Skylar in the interrogation room without the support of her parents or an attorney, the 2 authority figures attempted to convince her to implant a memory that would implicate her in her baby's murder. Because again, they're telling her over and over, "We know you're not telling the truth. There are scientific proof that you did burn your baby."
Which is not true.
Right. And that later came out to be that was not true.
Yep.
So, however, Lieutenant Frayne disagrees with this. He feels that when Skylar confessed, she spoke the truth. The trial lasted 1 week, and Skylar never took the stand in her own defense. The prosecution made their final statements as they painted a picture of a girl that lived a perfect life in a small town. She was a cheerleader. She was obsessed with her appearance, and she was determined to maintain a perfect life at all cost, including the health and wellness of her baby. So the defense reminded the jury that Skylar is presumed innocent until guilt can be established beyond a reasonable doubt. And if there are any doubts that Skylar had a live birth, it was their responsibility to fight for Skylar. So on September 12th, 2019, the jury of 7 women and 5 men deliberated for 4 hours as the Richardsons waited in terror, unsure of the fate of their daughter's future, knowing that there was no scientific proof to confirm her innocence. Would they believe that she had falsely confessed to murder, or had she actually killed her baby? Would she spend the rest of her life behind bars? As the family came back to the courtroom, Scott recalls that his daughter was such a nervous wreck that he had to support her as she walked. Kim, Scott, and Skylar held their breath as the jurors opened the envelope and prepared to read the verdict. And Kim remembers looking at that envelope, knowing that the fate of her daughter's future sat inside. What do you think they found her?
Ooh, this is one of the tougher ones. I'm going to let everybody at home listening to this gather their thoughts. The problem is this Ohio county seems pretty damn hell-bent on trying to find this person guilty. That's the only thing I'm worried about. I think, like, if these were all regular, normal people, that there'd be enough shadow of a doubt to say that she would be innocent. I would say. So I'm going to go ahead and go with the innocence.
So they stood and they said, "We, the jury, find the defendant as to count 1, not guilty in the offense of aggravated murder, not guilty of involuntary manslaughter, not guilty of child endangerment." The Richardson family nearly collapsed with relief as Skylar trembled and wept. However, because Skylar had made the decision to secretly bury Annabelle in the backyard, she was convicted of gross abuse of a corpse, and this is a felony that carries up to a year in prison. The judge ordered that Skylar be held in jail until sentencing, and Kim and Scott could only watch as their daughter was led away in handcuffs. Following the verdict, District Attorney David Fornshall, he denied that he pursued a case with insufficient evidence and made a statement to reporters indicating that because Skylar had buried her baby in the backyard, it prevented a thorough autopsy. And in a sense, he felt that she was being rewarded for this.
Absolutely. Once you lost that person that said that there was burning on the bones, you went into this without enough evidence, so you're an idiot.
Right.
Nice try.
And they were asked, the Richardsons were asked, like, what do you think of him? And they're like, I don't ever want to see this guy ever again.
The county completely wasted their money because this guy's a dipstick.
Right. So one day after the verdict, Skylar was back in the courtroom for her sentencing, and she spoke for the very first time. She apologized for her actions. She admitted that at times she could be selfish, but of course, this is me speaking. What teenager isn't selfish? It's like the nature of a teenager.
All of us can be selfish a little bit.
So she said with her actions, she realizes how much she has hurt so many people and she will forever be sorry. Judge Oda responded, "I firmly believe, Miss Richardson. In fact, I know in my heart that if you would have made different decisions, Annabelle would be here today. But I think that your choices before birth, during birth, and after show a grotesque disregard for life." So Skylar was sentenced to 3 years of probation, and the family felt immediate and immense relief, knowing that she could have been sentenced to life in prison.
Well, this is clearly a sided judge, somebody who's biased. Like, we don't need your opinion. Like, shut the hell up. And
right.
We're done with this.
Right.
We don't need to hear it. No, I'm not like coming into the defense of Skylar.
No.
She could have very well done some bad things. Maybe she was the reason for her daughter's death. I don't know. I'm not going to try to judge based off that, but just all the facts together, there's not enough. And
no.
In your heart, Judge, so your heart doesn't matter. So shut up. Just let him out of your courtroom.
So Scott Richardson indicated that this ordeal has caused Skylar to grow up and gain inner strength and resiliency. In September of 2019, Skylar entered an eating disorder treatment program. Her parents are well aware that this is a lifelong illness that she will always have to deal with. Skylar was released from probation after 14 months of her 36-month probation. In May of 2022, author Sonia Chopra published a book on this case. It's called Saving Skylar, the Brooke Skylar Richardson case. In 2022, Skylar's request to have the official records pertaining to the case be sealed. This means that access to the criminal records are blocked and hidden from the general public, as well as most background checks. Prosecutors opposed this decision, believing that it would diminish the seriousness of her actions. If you or someone you know is struggling with an eating disorder, please call the National Eating Disorders Helpline at 1-800-931-2237. And I will tell you, I also watched a Peacock episode on this. It was called Buried with Love, Baby Buried After Prom. There was also a good 48 hours special on this case as well. And that is a Brooke Skylar Richardson case.
That was really interesting. And again, I want to make it clear I'm not like for or against Brooke or Skylar. Sorry, she goes by Skylar. I there's no way to know for sure exactly what happened. Clearly, she has an eating disorder that's ruining a lot of her life, and nobody wants to have a baby that's dead. And she, even though she was 18, she's still kind of a kid. She's living with her parents. Like, she's not thinking it's illegal to bury a corpse. She wants everything to go away.
Right. She wants to make it go away.
Yeah. And if she's like, there's a chance that nobody would even know about this. I told my doctor not to tell anybody. None of my boyfriends know. My parents don't even know. This could all be gone. Put yourself in that situation when you're just a dumb kid, 18-year-old who's just like going through all this mental anguish already with your eating disorder, just finding out that you're pregnant and thinking your life's over. I know babies are beautiful blessings. Don't get me wrong. I know that for sure. And there's definitely somebody who would have loved to have taken care of that baby. And I'm positive Skylar wishes that she could have had a healthy girl, maybe going back. I don't know, but it's a tough situation.
But the fact that she went back to the OBGYN's office in July, kind of goes to show her immaturity and lack of understanding about the seriousness of this.
Yeah.
That her telling the doctor, yes, I gave birth to the baby, it was stillborn, and I buried her, that she didn't think that was going to be a problem. That kind of just goes to show. And her mom did admit, when she's kind of halted almost like as a 12-year-old mentally and physically,
like
when
naive.
Her eating disorder, just very naive and,
Yeah.
So.
You're sitting there in the doctor's office like, so you buried your daughter in your backyard? That's where you think this ends? And I did that, we might be able to do that to our pets, but you can't do that with a human because
Right.
It's like, I don't know. So tough story all the way around.
Yeah, just terrible all the way around, just sad.
Hopefully Skylar is doing better. It's a tough thing to live with, so, and you would know better than a lot of people.
It is a horrible, horrible thing to live with an eating disorder. Just awful.
Well, thank you so much for listening, and I would love to hear some of your comments. If you listen on Spotify, go ahead and leave some comments what you think about this particular situation. And then, if you really like what we do and would love to give us a subscription or something like that, you can subscribe in Apple Podcasts or in Patreon. The links are below in the show notes. You can subscribe to Apple Podcasts and get a free 3-day trial to try to listen to as many as you want. We have like over 80 bonus episodes, I think,
somewhere around there.
Yeah, so go ahead, invest in yourself, while you're, I think you deserve it. Christmas is coming pretty soon. Give yourself a little gift. Be like, hey.
A gift of Mike and Allison.
Yeah,
it's
why
the
not?
gift that keeps on giving.
All year long.
Just like the Jelly of the Month Club.
That's right. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you guys so much for being here. We'll be back next week for another episode. And until next time, bye.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.